The tallest trees in the world only live in one place. It's a narrow strip of the California coast, and these are the California coastal redwood trees. In order for these trees to thrive, they need a unique habitat. Well, habitat is the topic for the video for this week's episode of our Creative Fight podcast, and here I'll be pulling from chapter number 28. Now, I grew up in Northern California, and I've spent a lot of time in the redwoods, and there's just something so magical and majestic about those trees. And because I've spent some time in Redwood Forest, I've learned some interesting facts, like their roots aren't very deep. They go 6 to 10 feet deep, but they stretch out about 100. And their strength comes from the interconnected nature of their roots. And check this out, a tree which is by water, well, it will drink a lot of water, and then it will send water up to a tree which lives on top of a bluff. Now this tree gets a lot of sunshine. It will send back down nutrients to the trees below. So it's really that interconnected nature of all of those web of roots which help these trees to thrive. Now, redwood trees are also really thirsty. They drink a lot of water. Now, in the dry summer months, they drink or they absorb 40% of their water from that California fog. So again, these trees have some unique characteristics. There's certain things that need to be in place to help them to thrive. And I think the same thing can be said about you and about me. And what we need to do in order to be more creative, in order to live more meaningful and rich lives, is to really think about our habitat. Well, that's where the exercise for chapter number 28 comes in. In this exercise, I say, hey, why don't you start off just thinking about your ideal habitat? Even now, jot down a few notes. And I want you to do that by way of comparison and just have some fun with this. Think about your ideal habitat. What would really help you to be super ultra creative? And do this comparatively. Would it take to have a space that's like a bungalow, or maybe a base camp, a refuge, a retreat, a harbor, a home, a hut, a tree fort, a tent, an outpost, a cabin, a cabana? And just dream a little bit. Let your imagination go. But think about the characteristics of that space. Why would those help you to become more creative? Then next, I want you to think about another factor. This one I describe as secluded versus social. Now, if we look at redwood trees through an anthropomorphic lens, we could say that these trees are very social. They cannot live on their own. They need to have other trees around. Well, maybe you're like that. Maybe you thrive on all the hustle and bustle of having other people surrounding you. Or maybe you're a bit more introverted and you need to be secluded in order to create your work. So I want you to write down on the scale from secluded to social where you fall. And just start to analyze that and say, hey, you know what? I need a little more seclusion in order to really paint and create or draw or whatever it is. So then therefore, of course, the next step is to say, well, how can I create a space which reflects some of these things that I need? Now, the last thing that I talk about is this idea of materials and elements that surround you. Now, some people, in order to be creative, need a space which is really minimalistic and clean. And perhaps they need to have all of their tools tucked away in drawers and hidden, and then they pull them out one at a time, perhaps like a painter's brush. Or other people, they want to have all those materials surrounding them so that as they see these different things, their cameras or their whatever it is, they say, hey, I'm going to pick that up and start using it. And it's the sight of the object which actually ignites that spark. So think about materials. So again, there's 3 things to consider in regards to your habitat. One is just, what are some of the characteristics of an ideal habitat? And then second, secluded versus social. And then third, materials. And then of course ask yourself, well, how can I bring more of the good stuff into my life? How can I be like a redwood tree which isn't in Nevada but in California where it should be planted so that it can really just grow to amazing heights and thrive? All right, well, that wraps up this week's episode of the Creative Fight podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. And to those of you who are sending in notes or emails, thanks a ton for that. As always, if you want to post anything related to these, use that hashtag the Creative Fight. I really appreciate it. Keep up the fight, fight the good fight. It's really worth it, especially in regards to your space. I mean, if you want to thrive, space is so crazy important. All right, well, have a good rest of your day. I look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.